Thank you, Pali. We're diving into a critical issue that impacts countless men across South Africa and around the world, mental health. On the couch is clinical psychologist Clint Maggott, who will shed some light on the unique mental health challenges that men face and why they often struggle to seek help. Welcome back to Afternoon Express.
Thank you.
Why do men struggle to seek help when it comes to mental health? It's such a big deal.
It is a big deal. I think it is changing and kind of slowly improving.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, if we look at the way we raise men, typically we don't put a lot of importance on feelings. I remember being at like a party, seeing a small little toddler like fall quite badly, and, you know, dad going, okay, get up, you know, and you could tell the child was like, I think this is bad, you know, and just kind of dust yourself off.
Yeah.
And so really, if we look at the way we socialize boys versus girls, you know, emotions and feelings are not as important. And so men grow up quite disconnected from their own emotions. Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, isn't it? Because, I mean, we've still seen it happen in 2024. Like you say, you have those incidents and then these words and sentences that seem normal, like boys don't cry, or, you know, be strong. The whole concept of being strong means that you don't show emotion. Why is it still being, you know, emphasized?
I think there is quite a lot of, there's an attempt, I think, to change it. I think there's a lot of discussion. If you look at social media, there's kind of almost like two camps, you know, there's a real kind of allowing of men to be different, and then this kind of pushing of a almost kind of a hyper traditional masculinity. There's still an emphasis on men to be strong. That's still kind of like key. And often men are only left with, because your emotions don't really go away, right? So they're still kind of bottled in there. And the only one men are allowed really to express is anger. And so often what you see is these kind of angry men who are not, if it was seen in a woman, she would actually be called emotional, which is such a terrible double standard. And then men, it's just kind of seen as, oh, that's a very masculine man. But that's often the only emotion that they can let out.
Do you think that perhaps we're doing a disservice, and I ask this as a mother to, you know, a son and a daughter, by only targeting women, and that maybe our, you know, our choices when we speak about discussions around mental health should rather be neutral as opposed to being directed only at women? Like, what do you think when it comes to that? Should we include men in our discussions?
It would be great, I think, to be able to have almost like a gender-neutral response. But I think, unfortunately, historically, there's differences. You know, it's the same. In South Africa, you could talk about race like that. You know, it's like, unfortunately, you still need a nuanced approach because of historical differences. And so, unfortunately, the needs of women are actually different to the needs of men.
I appreciate that you brought up that point, because I would love to follow up that with anxiety and depression. I know that that manifests differently in men and in women, and the reactions and the responses to that is different, right? I mean, I've learned that men often respond, this is not generally speaking, but sometimes to substance abuse when they feel like they're bottling up too much. Is that correct?
Yeah, so men, I mean, I think depression and anxiety are actually the same in men and women. But yes, men, in terms of how they respond to it, it's typically different. So women might have enough insight into themselves and kind of go, okay, I think this is happening to me, what do I need to do?
And we've got our talking circles.
And you can
turn
talk,
to our
right?
others,
I think men tend to isolate, go inward, and they'll act it out. And unfortunately, it's typically pleasure-seeking or risk-taking or numbing. And that's where the kind of substances...
Pleasure-seeking, risk-taking or numbing.
So they're going to drive a little bit faster, shout a little bit more, possible sexual acting out, gambling, all those kind of highs as a way to distance themselves from feelings that are really uncomfortable, but also not masculine.
So like short-term gratification as opposed to long-term well-being.
And we know you just have to keep getting more, right? So inevitably you end up in vicious cycles of it just escalating until there's social problems. So often when I see men in practice, there might be an underlying depression or anxiety, but they're coming because they lost their job, or they're coming because they've got a substance problem, or they're coming because their family has kind of given them an ultimatum and they have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to ask you that from an expert point of view. When you're journeying with someone that has come in with mental health challenges, what are they like in terms of expression from the first session to, I don't know, to a session where you're getting a breakthrough? What is that transition period like?
So often men are quite threatened by the tissues.
They're threatened by the tissues.
Yeah, it's almost like,
by the box
why are
of
these so
tissues?
close to me? Do you need them? I can bring them over to you. And men typically, it takes them a while to really get like a language on how to talk about their emotions. So they often go, I'm feeling, or they wouldn't say, I'm thinking stuff, you know?
Yes.
Or some guys would say, I don't really like emotions, you know, I prefer just to be logical.
Yes.
As if it's an actual choice.
Yeah.
And you slowly see people get permission to kind of show different aspects of themselves.
Yes.
And you can actually see them typically be quite surprised by it. You know, like, where did that come from? And then also you can tell that they've put in a hell of a lot of work for a while to kind of hide all those things. And you can see this kind of relief of like, oh, I can be that, I can be this.
Yes.
So I think guys often kind of live in the head.
Yes. Okay. Well, we're going to ask you soon about how to not live in the head. Thank you so much.
Sure.
We hope that this conversation will encourage all of you out there to speak openly about the struggles that you are navigating and to seek professional help when needed. Stay tuned, as we're going to speak to a young man who has achieved a lot during his life, and we're also going to get tips on saving and investing in your children's education.